Order, order. Jonathan Davis to move the motion.
Good morning, Mr. Dowd. It is a pleasure to serve under your chairmanship. I beg to move that this House will consider the matter of the future of public libraries. Public libraries are at the heart of our communities. They have incredible value, as I'm sure we will hear from colleagues today. And they also have an important and underutilised role in delivering the government's plan for change. I'm going to talk briefly about the diverse and important roles that public libraries play in our society and the profound risks they face, and finally urge the Minister to work with colleagues to implement and go boldly beyond the recommendations of the Sanderson Review. That review, commissioned by the last government and published last year, calls on government to develop a national strategy for public libraries. And I want to thank the Chartered Institute of Library and Information Professionals, CILIP, for supporting me to understand the challenge faced by libraries and articulate the need for change. And it's good to see some friends from CILIP in the public gallery today. The public library, as we know it, has been shaped and moulded by the laws and motions enacted in this place. It is 175 years since the Member of Parliament, William Ewart, against much opposition, led the charge to introduce the first Public Libraries Act in 1850. This compelled boroughs to establish free public libraries, the first legislative step in the creation of an enduring national institution that provides universal free access to trustworthy information. Opposition was rooted in the belief that knowledge was a volatile force, too potent for, and I quote, the rough and poor, who were seen as unfit to grasp or use it responsibly. Libraries, opponents warned, would become breeding grounds for unrest and lecture halls of unhealthy agitation, threatening social order. So there is a sort of sweet irony then in the face of an explosion of misinformation and a rapidly changing world that libraries have become a rare beacon of trustworthy information where we can build our knowledge and skills with confidence. It may be that our democracy depends on it. While I could spend my full time today waxing lyrical about the importance of libraries, I wanted to think more specifically about what needs they meet and more strategically about their role in delivering government priorities and more precisely about the value they contribute to the economy. Everybody knows that the public purse strings are tighter than they once were. But despite facing real terms cuts of 49% since 2010, public libraries continue to produce immense educational, economic and social value. They have adapted in ways which William Ewart could not have imagined. Many, of course.
I thank the Honourable Member for giving way and congratulate him on securing this really important debate. In Somerset, we have a huge number of libraries, and a recent independent review cited Somerset libraries as an examples of excellence nationally. Community-managed libraries like Castle Kerry, for example, where links to carers and groups has been established. So does the Honourable Member agree with me that libraries must be kept well funded and accessible in recognition of their wide-ranging role within the community, particularly in rural communities?
I do agree with the Honourable Lady. Yes, we do need more money for libraries, but we also need to find ways of collaborating and innovating so that we can do more with less. But she makes a very good point about rural communities, and I thank her for...
Will the Honourable give way?
Go on, yeah.
I thank the Honourable Member for giving way and for securing this debate. Clearly, there is much agreement on the importance of public libraries, but in rural communities, which is why I intervened, like that of my constituency in Tiverton and Minehead, access is often limited by insufficient transport and the rural premium associated with running services. So would the Honourable Member agree with me that the Government and the Minister should urgently review steps to support access to rural libraries so that constituencies like mine are not left without these treasured community assets?
I know the Honourable Lady is a champion for rural communities and her constituents, and I know the Government is looking very carefully at public transport, but having a national strategy for public libraries, which is something I will come to, could draw upon what she has said there. Many of our libraries have quietly evolved into digital learning centres, enterprise hubs and pillars of community well-being. Across the country, brilliant initiatives have emerged, like the Glass Box in Taunton, where people of all ages develop 3D skills in printing and programming in library spaces. And there's initiatives like Gloucestershire's library-led Tackling Loneliness programme amongst older people. These are models which should be shared. 13.7 million adults used a library last year, not just for books, but to study, to get online, and in some cases as a place to feel safe. It was the Minister himself, I believe, who referred to libraries as cultural diamonds, and I could not agree with him more. And Baroness Twycross has noted they are one of the last non-transactional spaces in our communities. It's hugely encouraging to see such clear appreciation and understanding of public libraries at the heart of government. Happy to do so.
My own friend is making an excellent speech, and I congratulate him on securing this very important debate. He mentioned community spaces. In my borough of Haringey, they're using libraries for community spaces to encourage more people to come and use their library by various innovative ideas, such as the Library Late scheme, which opens the libraries later and gets artists and musicians to come in and actually make use of the community space that libraries are there to serve. Does he agree with me? This is a good way of encouraging the different diverse communities that we have to come in and access library spaces.
I do agree with my honourable friend from Enfield about what he has said. And in fact, sometimes people might not think to use the library, but if there is something else to get them through the door, then it might be something that prompts them to use it again in the future. He makes a very good point. Despite the hard work that has been done on mitigation, adaptation and commercialisation, cuts to public services since 2010 have meant that, tragically, public libraries are disappearing. Since 2010, we've lost around 276 static libraries in England, although that could be a substantial underestimate. We're losing about 40 a year, not to mention the good jobs for the trained professionals who run them. This is clearly unsustainable and must not be allowed to continue. We know that the situation in local authorities is acute, with a number of councils issuing Section 114 notices, and almost 1 in 5 English councils will rely on exceptional financial support from central government this financial year. But while local authorities do have a statutory requirement to provide a comprehensive and efficient library service, these requirements are vague and untested, leaving them at risk of being targeted for savings and efficiencies. I do not envy local authorities for the truly difficult choices they are having to make. However, we have a false dichotomy between long-term ambition and short-term crisis. Happy to do so.
Thank my honourable friend for giving way and securing the debate. In the Derbyshire Dales, our libraries play a crucial role, hosting all kinds of community activities and providing a space for the next generation to socialise and learn. And they're a lifeline for those in the most remote and rural parts of the constituency, especially the elderly. The access that libraries give to the internet, as well as physical and digital services like printing and archives, is vital for so many in our towns and villages. The previous Conservative Council made significant cuts to our opening times of the local libraries, and the newly elected Reform Group has made no promises to safeguard them. Does my honourable friend acknowledge that we have an urgent need to protect our local libraries from cuts, especially where they serve the remote and rural communities?
My honourable friend from Derbyshire Dales is absolutely right. When the Conservatives ran Derbyshire County Council until a matter of days ago, they did sign off for £625,000 worth of cuts to the library budgets over 4 years. They did keep all the libraries open, and they removed reservation fees for much of their stock, and credit where it's due. I welcome that. But savings were achieved through reduced opening hours, as he alluded to. Reduced opening hours may be a difficult decision that some councils need to take to keep libraries open, but we know that the impact of those decisions will disproportionately be felt by people who already face a lack of opportunity, and that's also true of library closures. As he said, Derbyshire now has a reform-led council. We know very little about what reform's priorities are for the authority or how it will run services, but I do urge the new leaders of Derbyshire County Council, the Reform UK leaders, to recognise the value that local libraries provide and find innovative ways of working together and collaborating to help them grow. I know the Minister won't be able to commit to putting more money into libraries without a strong evidence base for what it will achieve, and that strikes at the heart of the problem. We don't know what the extent of public library provision is. We don't know where it is, what it does and what it could do. Regulated healthcare services are listed in a national database with contact details for their leaders and information about what is being provided. A similar resource could be developed for libraries across local authorities, schools, colleges, universities, healthcare settings and prisons. This could show who can use those libraries the extent of their catalogues, the range of skills held by the professionals behind them, and opportunities for how libraries could be used for a range of activities, including commercial ones, which would support them to deliver increased public value. A national database could support collaboration between library and information professionals and allow government to better use the full portfolio of these services to support its skills and community cohesion agendas. That's why I want to echo calls from the other place for the government to develop a full national strategy for public libraries backed by robust data. This is an intervention which would not only produce savings through demand reduction on other services, but also unlock significantly more value than it would cost to implement. A national strategy could better support a child to get a better start in life, a parent to receive the support they need, a job seeker who finds a quiet and supportive place to search for work, somebody struggling with a public service who has an important but confusing form which they need explaining to them, an entrepreneur to find a new niche, an older person who safely manages to pay their bill with the help from the library staff. And all that is in addition to satisfying a thirst for knowledge which seeks to understand and further the human condition. Many local authorities already calculate the contributions that libraries are making to public health initiatives, digital inclusion, adult education, tackling isolation and so much more. But too often, this work is done to identify where the least harmful savings can be made. Other institutions like schools, job centres, the NHS should also know what libraries are contributing to their work, and so should central government. But without reliable data, we just don't have a full picture of the value our libraries are delivering, nor can we fully understand what vulnerable or disadvantaged people and communities stand to lose when their libraries start to close. Better data would also allow us to understand regional inequalities in the distribution of services, which doubtless exist. This is why a key recommendation of the Sanderson Review was to establish a national data hub to serve as the evidence base for the development of a national strategy. Much of the rest of the Sanderson Review can be implemented at little cost. This includes the creation of a libraries laureate to champion the sector, automatic enrolment for children to the libraries run by their local council, support for the network of library volunteers who do so much more for their communities, and awareness days or branding which local libraries can tap into. When the Sanderson Review was published, these recommendations were welcomed by the British Library, which has convening power and significant influence in the wider sector. Based on the huge variety of activities and services delivered by libraries, it is clear that a national strategy must be a cross-governmental one. But even so, this work needs one person to hold the pen. Industry experts are concerned that libraries no longer appear in a ministerial title, and they would greatly appreciate it if that was restored. This will be a modest change, and I hope it is one that the government will reflect upon. So I would be grateful in my closing remarks if the Minister would provide his reflections on the Sanderson Review and advise us on the government plans to deliver on its recommendations, including a timeline for any actions and whether he supports a national plan for libraries. I would also be grateful if he could advise us on what conversations he is having with CILIP, the British Library, local authorities and representatives of the library sector about how we can work together to improve public library provision. Finally, it would be wonderful to know what representations DCMS has made to the Treasury, articulating the value of libraries and asking for more money for these vital resources. It is wonderful to see so many members from across the House here today to talk about public libraries and why they are so very important. I'm excited to hear about the best practice which we no doubt will have across the many local areas represented, and also what specific challenges colleagues, communities have faced, and also about the life-changing impacts libraries have had on their constituents. And I'm looking forward to working with colleagues going forward to help us all deliver on the amazing promise of these truly amazing and special, unique places today and for generations to come. Thank you.
Thank you. First of all, can I remind members that they should bob, thank you very much, if they wish to be called in the debate, and that gives me the opportunity to see how much people are going to get to speak. Because it may come down, because I want to bring the opposition spokesperson and the Minister in at 10:30. So thank you very much for that. So 5 minutes, but that may come down depending on the level of interventions. Thank you. Jim Shannon.
Right away, but thank you very much. It's always a pleasure to speak in the debate, and always a pleasure, Mr. Chairman, to serve under your chairship as well. And can I congratulate the honourable gentleman for Mid Derbyshire for setting the scene so very well. Libraries are vastly important to him, obviously, but to myself as well, from a constituency point of view. And he's right to highlight the importance of public libraries across the United Kingdom. I speak from some experience in my. I used to serve in the Northern Ireland Assembly on the DCAL committee. That part of that responsibility was for libraries in Northern Ireland. Part of that responsibility was for libraries in my own constituency of Strangford. So the public libraries are services that are much loved, must be protected. So it's great to be here to discuss just that. Always good to see the Minister in his place, and look forward to his contribution, and also to the two, the Shadow and spokesperson for the Lib Dems, saying what they say in relation to libraries as well. My constituency of Strangford has many wonderful libraries, including Newton Ards, which has been refurbished just recently, Killylay, that's also been refurbished, and in Balnahinch. Just last Friday, what the libraries do, they're not just about books, Mr. Chairman, they're also about events that can happen. They're always related to books or along those lines, but they are for different events. Last Friday, there was a VE-VJ event in the library in Killylay. It was a pleasure to be there. An author from Belfast was launching his book, or speaking about his book in Killylay. It's about the Jewish people who came to Northern Ireland during the Second World War, and it was a lovely occasion. I think the ambience of the library added to the occasion, but the subject matter was very, very pertinent to the area, and also because there were many Jewish people that came to live in Killylay, and their contribution to the society was incredible. So that event on Friday was one that I remember for a long time. In a world where our phones and being online can dominate time, it is, I believe, fantastic that our community libraries can be upheld. Last year I was fortunate to be given some children's books at an event here in Westminster. I met with the local library in Newton Ards back home in the office and give them books to their library, so that they could then in turn use them and give them to children for their and the hunger and the eagerness of the children that read books, Mr. Chairman, I have to say is one that encourages me greatly. I've 6 grandchildren, every one of them devoured books, and even the wee ones, the youngest ones are 3 and 4. I was at an event downstairs today about eating habits. There's nothing to do with this, but one of the things that they were encouraging children was to eat their greens. I'm very fortunate to have the last 2 children, the 3 and the 4-year-old. They don't have to be encouraged to eat their greens. They also don't have to be encouraged to read books. It's really important that we can do that. For young children, Mr. Chairman, there are so many benefits of reading for the cognitive brain development. Enhancing language. I've been shocked in the past attending different libraries, the sheer variety of literature that is offered. I don't think there's one individual who would struggle to find a book suited to them. In addition to reading, our libraries offer crucial services in terms of providing computer access, community hubs, printing. There's the knit and natter elderly groups. They come and they do their bit of knitting and they natter for ages. Well, they certainly did whenever I was there anyway. Schools will often have their libraries, but also to do visits to community libraries for talks, etc., or to meet authors of popular books. Libraries NI are fantastic in offering mobile libraries for rural villages that perhaps don't have decent access to library service. So for constituents who are more isolated, with special consideration being given to older people, this gives them the opportunity to get out and about and engage with others. So the arrival of the mobile library in Northern Ireland to homes across the rural constituency means a lot. And it means a lot too when we see that banks and retail shops have went online and disappeared from the community. The libraries, the mobile libraries are still there. I'm hoping that our library service will not be left behind, and local libraries across the whole of the United Kingdom will continue to be funded to maintain their opening. I conclude, Mr. Chairman, conscious of time and the 5 minutes you've set. There are so many people of a wide variety of ages who love and rely on our library services. We must protect them through additional funding, through encouragement of their use, so that more people apply for library cards and take advantage of these wonderful services. Our libraries are very much part of the community. Thank you.
Libraries are the NHS for the soul. They are funded by our taxes, free at the point of use, and there when we need them the most. Libraries are no longer just about borrowing books, although that's still reason enough to love them. They are community hubs, digital lifelines, maker spaces, job centres and warm welcomes all in one. They offer a helping hand, a listening ear and a gateway to opportunity. They improve us, enrich us and inspire us. A library can change a life, whether it's a child discovering a love of reading, an adult learning new skills, or someone finding the support they need to turn their life around. Libraries are the crown jewels of our communities. And as with anything precious, they deserve to be cherished, protected and given everything they need to thrive. Yet today, too many libraries are simply trying to survive. Years of being in the crosshairs of local authority budget cuts have taken their toll. But never underestimate a community that hears their local library is under threat. The quietest places often have the loudest defenders, and they have a formidable arsenal of defensive weapons available, including, of course, paper cuts. Let's remember, libraries are not a luxury. They are a lifeline, a non-negotiable part of community life. I've loved libraries since I was 5, although I'll admit they were also the first place I've ever got fined and the only place I've accidentally triggered a bomb scare. I like to think I've got better at using them responsibly since then. One of my earliest memories is being taken to Bannockburn Library by my mum, who told me to take or to pick any book I wanted. And I remember being overwhelmed by the choice, thrilled by the freedom, and I walked out with a book on Roman warships. And that book sparked a lifelong love of history and of libraries. I should also admit I didn't walk it back in until well after it was due, and I got a fine for my trouble. Happily, in Stirling today, it's been many years since a Labour-led council did away with library fines, because no one should face a financial penalty for enjoying a book. When I was 15, walking home from orchestra practice, I popped into the library and lost track of time, and I left my clarinet in its black case under a table. The next day, it was sitting at the police station after being assessed as a potential security threat to the then Secretary of State for Scotland, who'd been speaking at the community centre that evening. Let's just say the local sergeant gave me a very firm talking to when I went to collect it. In Stirling and Strathallan, we are proud of our library heritage. The Leighton Library in Dunblane, the oldest purpose-built library in Scotland, has offered books since 1687. The Smith Art Gallery and Museum included a public reading room when it opened in 1874, and Stirling's first modern public library was opened in 1904 thanks to Andrew Carnegie's generosity. That spirit lives on today, most recently when 270 donations from local residents funded the award-winning Thomas Graham Library in Strathblane. Across Stirling and Strathallan, we have 18 libraries and 2 mobile library vans serving 70,000 people across almost 2,500 square kilometres. And our libraries are busy, from Bannockburn's Library award-winning makerspace to the fantastic Off the Page Book Festival, which is happening right now in libraries across my constituency. Stirling University's libraries and archives, including the Scottish Political Archive, remind us that libraries are also stewards of our shared history. Libraries are free, they are welcoming, they are open to all. They are where a child can fall in love with reading, where someone can retrain for work, where a lonely person can find connection. Colleagues, in the rush to balance budgets, we must not lose sight of what libraries give us and what we lose if we let them slip away. Libraries are not a luxury, they are a lifeline. Books can open doors, but libraries hold the keys to these doors. So let's not lock the doors on future generations by undervaluing and underinvesting in our libraries. Libraries ask for very little and give us everything in return. If we value community, we must value our libraries. Let's protect them, promote them, and make sure they are there, open, welcoming, and thriving for generations to come.
Excuse me. Anna Sabine.
It's a pleasure to serve under your chairship, and I thank the Honourable Member for Mid-Derbyshire for securing this debate. I want to talk about the future of public libraries in my fairly rural constituency of Freeman East Somerset. In particular, I'd like to highlight the role of Radstock Library, one of 11 community-run libraries in Bath and North East Somerset. While the council supports the core service, providing book deliveries in the library system, it's the local community that keeps its doors open. In Radstock's case, the council provides the staff, the premises and the IT, and for libraries without council support, that's a real struggle. But the value of these libraries is immense. In Radstock, the library is much more than a place to borrow books. People come to use the public computers and printers, something that's absolutely vital in a digital age. They come to read, to study, to hot desk and to connect. They run events like Lego Club and a knit and natter, and host sessions like Read Easy, employment skills sessions, diabetes workshops and the local food club. In a cost of living crisis, libraries provide something incredibly powerful, a free, warm, welcoming space where people can learn, access essential services and find community. But in Radstock's case, that relies very heavily on volunteers to run it day to day, and it matters now more than ever. And we mustn't forget our rural areas where mobile libraries remain a lifeline, and I would like to make sure they get considered in this debate and in any future library strategy.
Would she give way on that
Yes,
point?
certainly.
I thank my honourable friend for giving way. As she rightly says, Somerset Council operates many mobile libraries across the county. They do provide that lifeline to rural villages in Glastonbury and Somerton, like Pencilwood, Beer, Crocombe, Nortonsome, Hampden and Boltonsborough, to name such a few. But the cost of delivering these library services has increased, coupled with years of underinvestment by the previous Conservative administration in Somerset and the recent spiralling costs. So does my honourable friend agree with me that the government must prioritise funding for local government, because without it, vital services like libraries will be vulnerable to cut costs?
Yeah, I absolutely agree with my honourable friend, and actually the risk with mobile libraries in terms of numbers, they may not be seen to necessarily have as much footfall as a static library, but actually they provide much more to local communities than can be qualified in footfall. Not everyone lives near a town library, and mobile services are often the only point of access to books, the internet or advice for isolated residents. They also keep people connected, especially older residents and those without transport. And I know from meeting with the mobile library in the village of Road in Somerset in my constituency, they also provide a really useful early warning if someone in that village needs extra support or is vulnerable. The function of libraries has changed dramatically over the past 20 or 30 years, but their importance is growing. If we want to tackle isolation, digital exclusion and inequality, we must protect and properly support both our community-run and mobile library services. Thank you.
Thank you. Tony Vaughan.
Thank you, Mr. Dowers, under your chairship, and I thank my honourable friend, the member for Mid-Derbyshire, for securing this timely debate. Public libraries are critical community centres that educate and enlighten. They are used disproportionately by people from disadvantaged socio-economic backgrounds. And in December 2022, in my constituency of Folkestone and Hythe, our main library in Folkestone Town Centre closed and has since remained closed. The library opened to the public in its current location in 1888, and it's one of the oldest Carnegie libraries in the country, and was operating in a beautiful Grade 2 listed building at Grace Hill. In 2024, Folkestone was named the best place to live in the southeast of England by the Sunday Times, but there is a high level of inequality in my constituency. 3 wards in the town are in the bottom 10% of the most deprived in the UK. And Folkestone Library has played a critical role in supporting many people, including families and elderly people who are living in poverty. And the library was not some relic of the past. It was not merely a borrow-a-book service, but had become a hub for the community. There was free Wi-Fi and computers that could be used. Activities and events were put on. There was a local heritage service for local historical materials. I don't want to talk too much about the Conservatives, but the sad reality was that this library, run under Kent County Council, had been neglected, and it was allowed to get into a state of disrepair, so that today the cost of repairing the building around £3 million, which would have been much less if the repairs had been carried out when they ought to have been. We now have a reform-run Kent County Council. One of the first things that the new leader of the KCC, Lyndon Kemp-Karan, said was that she wanted to, quote, appoint some sort of doge, which I took to mean a reference to the Elon Musk-led US government body responsible for savage cuts in the US, including in education. I would gently suggest to her that after 14 years of Tory austerity, that savage cuts are not what we need. And I would call on the new leader of Kent County Council to commit to saving Grace Hill Library and to work with me and the local stakeholders to make that happen. I've never given up on reopening Folkestone Library. I believe it has a future. In my view, tying the library to the existing tide of Folkestone's regeneration is crucial. Both national and regional government should support regeneration that has already proved itself to be successful, and we need that regeneration to help fund libraries. In Folkestone, that regeneration has already happened to a degree through development of the creative industries over the last 20 years. And there's a proposal to extend this further with a new creative campus that makes arts an even stronger magnet for creativity and economic growth. The library is part of that. A £10 million investment in the creative campus could deliver a curriculum for creatives creating a multi-use arts and communal space, space for the community to gather, library offer, etc. Now, I know that as a community, if we want to open this library, we need to be creative and we need to think outside the box. I want to thank the Minister for coming down and seeing what Creative Folks have done. Myself and Alistair Upton, the CEO of Creative Folks, and we're incredibly grateful for him for giving up his time to see how Folkestone is leveraging the arts to regenerate our community. And I also want to pay tribute to John O'Connor and the Save Folkestone Library campaign, who've collected thousands of signatures and who've been working really, really hard to come up with a community vision for this library. And it's that spirit of campaigning that will keep libraries alive. But they need, as others have said, the future of libraries has to work on what already works. It has to work on regeneration and things that are going to fund it other than through simple traditional funding models. Upskilling, the Creative Campus idea, would allow teaching of existing creatives and provide a hub for activity of all kinds. So I believe that through strong campaigning, determination and thinking creatively about the future, Folkestone Library can be saved, but it will need the help and the support of the new reform-run Kent County Council, and I will seek to be meeting with the new leader and whoever is in charge there to make sure that this opens for the good of the people of Folkestone.
Yeah. Jamie Stone.
Thank you very much. Well, it's a pleasure to serve under your chairmanship. And I'm going to give a pub quiz question to the Minister, which is this. Which historic figure has the greatest number of busts in the United States? And people might say George Washington, Abraham Lincoln. But the truth is, it's Robbie Burns. And that is because, as the member for Stirling and Strathallan has referred to, Andrew Carnegie paid for a huge number of libraries in the States, and one of the conditions was that each of those libraries had to have a bust of Scotland's national bard. Another interesting fact for you, I'm obviously informed today, is that Andrew Carnegie built so many libraries across Scotland and all over the UK and indeed all over the world. And one in particular he put in the village near where his castle of Skibo in Sutherland. And it is in the village hall. He also paid for the village hall to be built. So we can say that in the world there are two Carnegie halls. And the great-grandson of Andrew Carnegie, Mr. William Thompson, did actually, in recent times, try to get Dolly Parton to come and sing in Sutherland's Carnegie Hall, but sadly she demurred. I, like the Honourable Member for Stirling and Strathallan, attended my Carnegie Library in my hometown of Tain when I was a boy, and I went rather worse than running up a fine in that I actually lost the book. It was actually Enid Blyton's 5 Get Into a Fix, because this put me in a hell of a fix. And I actually avoided going to the library for the next 2 years of my life because I was petrified of the librarian, Mr. Seller. And it was only in later years when I was in my secondary school that I took up the habit of using a lending library. And today I am a member of my lending library in Tain, in my hometown. And I use it regularly. And just one final thing is that one of my predecessors for the MP for the North of Scotland, Sir Arthur Bignald, in 1909 presented a stuffed crocodile to Wick Carnegie Library. It is still there, although I have to say, Mr. Dowd, I have no intention of following in Sir Arthur Bignall's footsteps. I don't have any stuffed crocodiles handy at the moment. Just a couple of facts. It is the case from a recent survey that 16% of the Scottish population visit a library once a week, and slightly over a third of the Scottish population visit a library once every month. And I'm not going to try and elaborate on what the excellent points have been made about how important libraries are to civil society, but the fact is, as others have said, that old people use them. And I remember the demise of bookshops being predicted some years ago. They thought that the internet and online would get rid of them. It's not the case. Books are selling more now than ever before. So books are part of the way we do things as human beings, whatever language and whatever form they are. And like others, I see the libraries as absolutely crucial to the happiness of society. And what I would say finally to the Minister, rather than posing a pub question, is that look very much forward to his contribution. I'm sure there'll be lots of best practice and proposals there. Would he be kind enough to perhaps share his thoughts at an appropriate point with the Scottish Government? because we do see, and I'm saddened there are no representatives of the Scottish Government here, we do see a worrying number of closures north of the border. I do completely understand that it is devolved, but I am duty-bound to take up the concerns of my constituents. Thank you, Mr. Dowd.
Thank you. Jazz Athwell.
Thank you, Mr. Dowd, and what a pleasure it is to serve under your chairmanship. And can I also thank my friend, the member for Mid Derbyshire, for securing this very important debate. When most people think of libraries, they picture buildings in disrepair, defunct, disused, and on the verge of imminent closure. It shouldn't have to be this way, and I'm pleased to say in Ilford it isn't. In Ilford, we protected our libraries. We made them more than just places to borrow books. We made them places for families to come together, residents to exercise, and for communities to learn about our local history. Now, across the whole of Redbridge, our libraries are state-of-the-art, with air conditioning, refurbished reference areas, upgraded stock with 50% new titles, meeting spaces, modern public toilets, free Wi-Fi and new computers and iPads, and some are now open from 6 a.m. till 10 p.m. We achieved this in the face of the last 15 years of Conservative austerity, which gutted our local budgets. As council leader, I knew we had to be bold. From policing to parking and youth centres to libraries, we refused to accept decline.
Of course. So, may I thank the honourable member for giving way? He was leader of the Redbridge Council, neighbouring to my borough of Havering. Congratulations on managing to keep the libraries open in Ilford. Could he explain, however, why Labour Residents Association Council, neighbouring to Redbridge, has not managed to do the same, so that Gideon Park Library is closing, South Hornchurch Library and Harold Wood? Surely we should make them community hubs and keep them going and alive for everyone to use and enjoy.
Thank you. Thank you for that intervention. And I think the politicians sometimes do have to realise that they are in control and that they can make decisions. Nobody comes into politics to manage decline. We actually come into politics because we want to make a difference. And certainly I know that going back in 2010, when Redbridge was Conservative run, the first thing they put on the table was to close Goodmayes Library, which is open to this day because we refused to close it. To some, these may be small issues, but they are vital to the health and well-being of our communities and our children. That's why, despite relentless pressure to retreat, to do less with less, we chose to invest rather than divest from our library services. We pioneered what's, the co-location model, transforming our libraries into vibrant, multi-user community hubs, as the member for Romford just mentioned. In Woodford Green, our library is also a gym, and it's really strategically placed with all the books in the library, health, fitness, diet, and you walk towards the gym. That's what greets you. And when you come out, you can actually take books on everything you've exercised on. In Redbridge Library, where I host my surgeries, it's a museum and has a busy cafeteria. In Hainault, our library is a children's centre and a community hub. These are models of good practice that could and should be shared under the type of national library strategy the member for Mid Derbyshire is asking for. In Ilford, our libraries do more than just provide books and provide study spaces. They are community spaces to meet, to learn about our history and to exercise. This is what we can achieve when we put our residents at the heart of decision-making. Innovative solutions do exist. We just have to be bold enough to deliver them. When they tell us to shut down, we have to say we're going to invest. That's how we secured the future of our public libraries, and I hope this finds its way into a national library strategy. Thank you.
Thank you. Can I get Mahindra?
Thank you, Mr. Dowd. It's a pleasure to serve on your chairmanship. Can I congratulate the member for Mid-Derbyshire for calling this debate. As you can see from the chamber, it's very well attended, and rightly so. Libraries remain at the heart of our communities. Libraries are more than just books, though. They offer computer access and internet access, host local community groups, and provide safe spaces for those that need it. Library staff supported by volunteers are pillars of the community, helping those most vulnerable, such as the elderly, children and job seekers. Even throughout the pandemic, libraries adapted to lockdown, where they began to provide online services, including e-books and online activities. These services would have supported many families throughout those difficult times, without which many would have struggled. I am very passionate about all children having access to a quality education, and libraries help provide this. Libraries provide the environment for children to be curious and have imagination. I'm lucky enough to have Harry Potter World in my constituency, and it would have been J.K. Rowling's ability to actually read previous books like Enid Blyton's of the world that would have driven that imagination that allowed her to create that vision that we all enjoy today. Statistics show about 2/3 of children aged 15 visit the library each year in London. They are using the library in multiple ways by borrowing books, using computers and printing facilities, or as a study space. There is nowhere else that could offer all of these things. I am lucky enough to have 6 libraries in my constituency of South West Hertfordshire: Abbots Langley, Chorleywood Community, Croxley Green, Kings Langley Community, Oxley and Rickmansworth. I am a regular user of those libraries, hiring meeting rooms at Croxley Green Library to meet with constituents and discussing a library-linked scheme. Croxley Green Library is a Tier 2 library, meaning it is a community-focused small library. Their library-linked schemes allow residents to request specialised research from a librarian. They also ran a slipper project encouraging elderly people to bring in their old slippers to be replaced with new ones to keep warm during the winter. I want to spend a bit of time just speaking specifically about Rickmansworth Library, which has been closed, unfortunately, for a number of months due to a refurbishment following a fire. Understandably, there's been concern from locals because they don't have access to the library services. I know the County Council has provided some of those services off the site. But I would continue to work with Herts County Council, depending on whoever's the new leader, to ensure that my community has that services that they've had over many, many years. I don't want Rickmansworth Library to be one of the 2,276 libraries that have closed since 2016. Instead of seeing libraries closed, we should be seeking plans to open new ones, for example in Leavesden, in my constituency, which does not have a current local library. In England and Wales, only 78% of the population are within a 30-minute walk of a public library. We should be investing to increase this. Under the Conservative government, we committed to publishing a public library strategy which the election unfortunately prevented. Yes, of course.
On the provision of libraries and where they are, certainly in Scotland, the statutory provision is to provide a library service, but that means you could provide one library for my constituency of nearly 2,500 kilometres. Would you agree with me that access to the library and proximity to the library in terms of travel times is important for any strategy?
I would absolutely agree with that, especially for some of our more rural communities. I know that there are modern ways of solving that, including mobile libraries, which allow communities to have access for a few hours each week where the van is physically driving around, and books can be pre-ordered via an online system. So I wholeheartedly agree with that. Could the Minister commit the government to publishing a public library strategy? Because I'm sure that the members of the wider committee would be keen to hear the direction of travel on that. And in closing, Mr Dowd, can I congratulate Hertfordshire Library Services as they are celebrating 100 years, their 100-year anniversary, and we should be supporting all counties so that they can continue to offer these services and remain the strong community hubs they have been for so long. Thank you.
Thank you. It's a pleasure, as always, to serve under your chairship. And I want to thank my honourable friend for securing what is a vital and important debate. As has been said many times already, libraries aren't just buildings, they're not just physical things, they are an emblem of what communities are. And particularly in my constituency, where you have very sparsely populated elements of rural Northumberland, they play a really crucial role in bringing together those communities and foster educational thought and development. I'd just like to mention a few of the fantastic libraries we've got in the short space of time I want to take up. The Spectral Centre in Prodo, the Northumberland Library in Head-on-the-Wall, Holtwhistle Library, Wylam Library, Belgium Library, Allendale, Newburn, Crawcrook, and the Queen's Hall Library, where my office is located upstairs. And I think it says a lot that, you know, as an MP, it's really good to be able to be based within the community and within the library, and that space allows me in my office to do that. And in Matley, in my constituency, there's an old telephone box that's been transformed into a book swap shop for residents to exchange books. I want to commend the particularly valuable contribution of Hannah Cutler, a resident from that village, for her contribution to the local community. And it's clear that libraries offer much more than just educational material. They're hubs for social interaction, communities to share thought. And in rural communities and in the fractured social media environment that we live in, I think that's even more valuable today than it almost has ever been. The opportunity to have safe local spaces in which we can curb social isolation through shared community experience is one that's really vital. And I was reading it this morning before I came in, a study that said 1 in 5 children in the North East don't own a book. I do sincerely hope by the end of this Labour government's time in office that we have combated that particularly appalling statistic. And again, when I look at the work done in libraries, we have excellent work done by the town councils in my constituency who host things like green jobs fairs there, who host events for the Ukrainian community who come to my constituency and have settled and have made a fantastic contribution since the outbreak of war in Europe, to have events to bring them together as communities and to bring some of the host families together. It really is a privilege every week to look at the what's on in the various community libraries and see the different ways the community is coming together. And obviously representing the largest constituency in England, which I think I'm contractually obliged to mention every time I stand up. I don't always get to all the libraries every week, but I do try my best. And every library I've mentioned, I believe, we try and have our surgeries in, because I think that's a really crucial role. And when we invest in libraries, we don't just invest in literacy. Consciousness Mental Health Awareness Week, we're also investing in that mental health support, in digital access, and in the future of the residents themselves. And in the brief amount of time I have left, I think also talk about some of the rural primary schools and the libraries that they have that benefit from, as has been discussed, some of the mobile, of course.
Mr. Dyer, I do think members make a very valid point about the mental health. Would you agree with me that for many old people, it is one way of combating loneliness, which is one of the tragedies of many people in their old age?
I think he's made an absolutely. Thank you for his intervention. He's absolutely correct in that. And you know, I don't think it's just old people. I think in the communities that I represent, often people who are working from home, who do not always get out, find themselves going to a library and taking advantage of an opportunity to get into town. It's something that's tremendously valuable for everyone of all ages, but I do recognise this point particularly around older people. And so, as I just quickly move on to Otterburn Primary School before I finish, they are one of the smallest schools and one of the most isolated villages in the country. They do absolutely tremendous work. I know they're benefiting from a breakfast club, but they're also, through the library, bringing access to books to children, and it was an absolute pleasure to visit them fairly recently and to talk about the challenges and the infrastructural challenges that they face as an extremely rural school.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Dowd. It's an honour to serve. It's an honour to contribute to this debate with you in the chair. And I thank my honourable friend for bringing this debate. It's an absolute honour to celebrate the public library and the dedicated librarians that have kept them going in recent years. They are more than buildings filled with knowledge and books. They encapsulate who we are. Funded by our taxes, free at the point of need, free at the point of delivery, they are the cornerstones of education, equality and opportunity in our country. The more you read, the more things you will know. The more that you learn, the more places you'll go. Dr. Seuss couldn't have said it better, and I think that sums up the value of the library. The public library is a safe space for people of all ages and all backgrounds to explore their imagination. I feel embarrassed to say this in front of the Minister, who is a very learned gentleman, the writer of 9 books, but the library provided me with my earliest opportunities to read. I explored Enid Blyton, Goosebumps, Point Horror, The Hardy Boys, sometimes even Nancy Drew, and moved on to Ed Bain, Michael Crichton and Stephen King. I also did explore Shakespeare, Austen and Dickens, but I must say that the lion's share of what I learned was probably at the lower end of the cultural spectrum, but it put me into a good position to learn, to be curious about knowledge, to enjoy reading and to develop that lifelong habit. And I want my constituents in Bournemouth East to be able to develop that too. It also provided something important to me. I grew up in poverty, caring for 2 young disabled parents. If I had not had a public library on my doorstep to go to complete my homework, a warm, safe space, I don't think I would have been elected as an MP. Were it not for the kind eyes of librarians who looked into young children and saw potential and something that they wanted to nourish, I don't think that I could serve as the Member of Parliament for Bournemouth East. So I want to give a particular thanks to librarians around our country, but particularly in my constituency of Bournemouth East, who I know have gone not just the extra mile, but the extra 100 miles to keep libraries going in the face of significant cuts. Because since 2010, UK public libraries have lost around £232.5 million in the last decade. That's because of cuts by the Conservative government to local authorities of all political colours and a decrease in funding being passed on. We've seen the closure of 800 libraries since 2010. We've seen the loss of librarians from 24,000 in 2009 down to 15,000 in 2018. That is an absolute travesty. And in BCP, in Bournemouth, Christchurch and Poole, where my constituency is based, in the last financial year, we have seen hundreds of thousands taken out of libraries' budgets by the Liberal Democrat Alliance, reckoning with the mismanagement of council funds by the previous Conservative administration and reckoning with the Conservative austerity that was passed on to it. As a consequence, that Towns Alliance, that 3 Towns Alliance, when it set the budget, caused libraries to shorten their opening hours and be closed for an extra day a week. The Bournemouth Echo says that opening times were cut by an average of 10 hours per week per library across BCP. And in the public consultation for that budget, 60% of respondents disagreed with the proposed closing times that have now been introduced. Many staff have had their hours reduced, some have left. This is a sad loss of valued and experienced people. The Labour group in BCP Council spoke against those cuts, particularly as the library strategy was still yet to be published. They argued against the closures and changes to opening times and asked that there be a far more strategic approach while acknowledging the funding pressures. So, for example, trying to be proactive and solutions-focused, the group said that no 2 neighbouring libraries should be closed on the same days, at the same times, and see libraries as community hubs rather than just lenders of books. And this speaks to the challenge that we face in our public library system, because although providing a library service is a key statutory function for councils, the quality and the quantity of that service is up to the council. It's dependent on the funding that they make available. And when we have such a crisis in social care, increasing the cost that councils have to bear, those who fall behind will be people who use libraries. We need to have a radical solution to social care and local government funding, which I know is beyond the remit of the Minister, but I do think it's part of that strategic thinking through of what local councils mean in this day and age and what role libraries play within the delivery of services by local councils. And I want to echo what's been said by many of my colleagues. Libraries are a critical place for MPs to hold their surgeries. I've held my surgeries in Boscombe, Castle Point, Charminster, Folkestone and Southbourne, Springbourne libraries. In fact, the only library that I haven't held a surgery in is Tufton, and that's just because it's too small. And in going to those libraries and meeting staff and bringing constituents into the libraries, you realise just how much the library is loved, not just as a place that lends books, but actually as a place where people can get guidance and advice and support. So, in conclusion, it is important that we provide the funding that libraries need, but it's also important that we provide the funding to councils with a clear definition of what their roles are so that libraries don't lose out as a consequence. And I just want to close by saying I give my thanks not just to the dedicated librarians of Bournemouth East, but although we are talking about public libraries, I also give my thanks to the House of Commons Library, because it is a brilliant institution which has served MPs well. I personally have benefited enormously, and every time I go into that library, I'm greeted with a smile and a significant amount of knowledge. So a huge thank you to the House of Commons Library staff.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr Dowd. It's an honour to serve under your chairship. I congratulate my honourable friend for securing this important debate. Public libraries are at the heart of our communities, and we urgently need a national strategy to protect and strengthen them. In 2016, North Yorkshire Council faced the devastating prospect of closing 31 libraries. Instead, communities were given the chance to step in, and they did. We are really fortunate in Scarborough that the Newby and Scorby Library was one of those lucky few, and that local volunteers formed a charity to keep it open. Today it is thriving. It has 60 volunteers, including trustees, gardeners, cleaners and 40 library assistants. In 2024 alone, these volunteers gave over 11,000 hours. This dedication has led to 42,000 visits, 550 events for 6,000 attendees, and they've helped 1,500 people with individual IT assistance, help with bus passes, passport applications, and how to use mobile phones. And they also run a home library service. This isn't just a library, this is vital social infrastructure. And earlier this year, I was honoured to attend the celebrations as the Newby and Scorby volunteers received the King's Award for Voluntary Service. And whilst we must champion our community libraries, volunteers cannot be expected to keep libraries open indefinitely, especially as funding continues to shrink. According to the University of Warwick, since 2010, library funding has fallen by over half. Libraries are looking to the government for a long-term plan, which includes a sustainable funding model. And I'd be grateful to the Minister if he could address when the government intends to implement the recommendations of the 2023 Sanderson Review, including the establishment of a Libraries Laureate. The title Libraries Laureate conjures up a Pied Piper figure leading a trail of word-hungry children into the book corner. But of course, it's nothing of the kind. It would be a high-profile, distinct voice who could advocate on behalf of libraries and raise awareness of what these books can provide beyond books, as we've heard from many members today. Libraries provide human contact in a world where loneliness and the company of a smartphone are on the rise. In the old days, you were fined when you had an overdue library book. These days, you can steal a library book and use it to write another book or anything else for that matter. Not if you're a library borrower, of course, but the owner of an AI company using books uploaded to the internet to train AI models. We must protect the rights of the authors. Otherwise, we face a future not only short on libraries, but short on the creative working people who write the books to fill the shelves.
Thank you. Before I call the opposition spokesperson, I just want to give the sponsor an opportunity to wind up, so could colleagues bear that in mind?
Much,
no,
when, oh, sorry.
At the end. Ian Room.
Thank you, and it's a pleasure to serve under your chairmanship, Mr Dowd, and I would like to thank you to my honourable friend from Mid-Derbyshire for securing this important debate, and actually for all honourable members for their passionate contributions this morning. The Liberal Democrats believe in keeping libraries well funded and accessible, recognising their role in promoting literature, digital skills and public well-being. Public libraries are some of the most beloved community services, and we will all be painfully aware that despite the statutory duty to provide a comprehensive and efficient library service, many local authorities across the country have tried to find financial savings in this area. Speaking as a lifelong councillor and a council leader, I know the hard choices many local authorities will be facing. Many will be trying to either consolidate library services, reduce opening hours or delay important building repairs. Research by the BBC suggests that at least 190 libraries in the UK have closed within the last 5 years. The potential long-term consequences are troubling. Shockingly, the UK has one of the lowest rankings for teenage literacy amongst OECD countries, something that impacts the personal attainment and the life chances of young people. It is in the library that many children will first learn that books can be chosen and read for fun, not just assigned by homework by a teacher. However, the last government's independent review into public libraries, published in 2023, highlighted a lack of awareness of what libraries achieve, not just a lack of among the public, but also across local and national government. That is compounded by a lack of adequate reporting on their good work. Libraries are also vital to many marginalised adults in our society. The elderly, those in poverty or social isolation, the unemployed, or those with limited literacy and digital skills. They offer somewhere that is free, safe and easily accessible, with a wealth of important information for everything from job seeking to medical advice that is a lifetime. And that is not to mention all the adopted uses of libraries as a venue for a vast range of community events, support groups, employment workshops, live music, arts and craft activities, flexible working spaces, access to the internet and public records, amongst many other functions. Braunton Library, in my own constituency of North Devon, recently won South West England's Library of the Year at the British Book Awards. Part of what made them stand out was not just reading initiatives, but their popular children's Lego club, social groups like Knit and Natter, and an arts council project called The Gatherers, which brought local people and resettled Afghan families into a flower collecting society, trying to break down language and cultural barriers to help integrate people more fully into British society. As Liberal Democrats, we welcome the Department for Culture, Media and Sports announcement in February of the additional £5.5 million for the Libraries Improvement Fund, but it is likely other departments also owe a debt of gratitude to public libraries that isn't fully recognised. Even a relatively small public library like Braunton Library, that I referred to earlier, holds over 300 community events annually. This is a typical example of the way public libraries are being asked to pick up ever wider duties from other public services. In England, 30% of adults aged 16 and over have used a public library in the past 12 months, around 13 million adults. 27% of those brought a child with them. The most recent figures suggest as many as 2/3 of all children in England visit a library at least once a year. We are talking about public service with absolutely colossal reach into communities, representing people who sometimes have a very quiet voice in a public debate. The Liberal Democrats would be open and flexible to ensure sustainable funding solution, including a review of good causes eligible for lottery funding and possible mechanisms for library endowments. Libraries represent lifelong learning and social cohesion. They are being asked to do far more with far less. We must ensure that in the future, the funding of libraries represents the increasing diversity of the roles they fulfill. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr Dowd. It is a great honour to serve under your chairmanship again today, and I'd like to start by thanking the honourable member for Mid-Derbyshire for securing this important debate. It is great to hear from members across this House make their contributions, and I thank them for championing libraries in their constituencies across the country. Libraries matter. They are one of the few places in public life where people of all ages and backgrounds are welcomed in without cost or condition. Whether it's a child discovering books for the first time, students revising for exams, pensioners playing bridge or Scrabble, or those needing digital support or Wi-Fi to apply for jobs, libraries quietly meet a range of needs every single day. Baroness Sanderson put it very well in the other place. No matter where you are from, you can walk into any library in the country and ask for help. In return, you will be asked for precisely nothing. Well, apart from maybe to return your book on time. That civic spirit, quite constant and universal, still defines the best of what public services should be. And demand for libraries nationally continues to highlight this popular public service. Recent data from DCMS highlights nearly 1 in 3 adults in England, around 13.7 million people, used them in the past year of published data. Mr Chairman, as you all know, libraries are a statutory service under the Public Libraries and Museums Act 1964, and rightly so. But how they are delivered is a matter for local councils, as we've heard already today. That is consistent with the principles we on this side of the House believe in: local services delivered by local people, community engagement and fiscal responsibility. However, it would be remiss of me not to acknowledge the challenges that local authorities and libraries face in terms of funding and provisions. As a former local councillor, I do understand the scale of challenges faced by many councils, with new duties and demands on precious resources. But it's not all doom and gloom, as my home area has demonstrated. In my own borough of Bexley, the Conservative-run council has built 2 new state-of-the-art libraries in Sidcup and also in Thamesmead. The Sidcup Library, now on the High Street, remains extremely popular since opening with the new cinema, and was very busy when I visited on Saturday to view the fantastic VE display arranged by the Lammerby and Sidcup Local History Society. In fact, Mr Chairman, alongside brilliant local archive and history volunteers, my own constituency of Old Bexley, Sidcup and Welling has been home to Roald Dahl for some part of his life, as well as other creative talents such as Quentin Blake, Roger Moore and perhaps most famously Gary Oldman, who went on to portray Winston Churchill in the motion picture Darkest Hour. So lots of entertainment for both readers and film fans coming from Bexley, which I hope many will enjoy during this summer's reading challenge, which again I'm so happy to support people taking part in this year in our libraries. And in truth, we have seen councils across the country adapt creatively to the challenging backdrop for libraries in the online age. From traditional council-run libraries to commissioned trusts and community-supported services, delivery models have evolved. But the mission remains unchanged: to provide a comprehensive and efficient service that meets the needs of local people of our constituents around the country. And I would like to take this opportunity to say thank you to all of the library professionals around the country, and particularly those in Bexley, in the House of Commons Library, and the incredible volunteers at Blackfen Community Library in my constituency, which has gone from strength to strength since opening as a real community hub in Blackfen, which I am proud to support throughout the year. This and the opening of the new Sidcup Library on the High Street also highlight the powerful role libraries can play in terms of local economic generation and footfall for town centres, a point that's not been made that much today, but I think it's an important point to make. Mr Chairman, when in government, the Conservatives did support this evolution. Through the Libraries Improvement Fund, we invested more than £20 million to help modernise buildings, improve digital access and make sure that libraries remain fit for purpose in the 21st century. We commissioned the independent review of English public libraries, led by Baroness Sanderson excellently, which laid out a practical vision for renewal through stronger data, better branding, wider membership and deeper community connections. We supported the idea of a universal library card, a national data hub and closer alignment with institutions like the British Library to strengthen the sector's long-term sustainability. This is not about centralisation, but about enabling the sector to thrive by giving it the tools, visibility and consistency that it needs. Mr Chairman, we must also acknowledge the vital role libraries played during the coronavirus outbreak, as my honourable friend has mentioned already. Libraries moved swiftly online, offering e-books, streamed activities and virtual learning. In the most difficult of circumstances, libraries kept people connected to culture, to community and to one another. But as I've said already, Mr Chairman, we must also be honest that we do understand the financial pressures facing local councils. Financial pressures that are being made by worse by this government's budget decisions. For example, Bexley Council in my own area is £5 million worse off already this year, and that will mean more difficult decisions to be made. And for councils in that situation around the country, I would encourage them to look at the community model, which has worked well in my constituency and avoided closures from happening. We must support councils in protecting core services while encouraging partnerships, co-location with other services and volunteer engagement where appropriate. Finally, Mr Chairman, we would like to take this opportunity to urge the Government to build on the momentum of the Sanderson Review. The review, conducted in a cross-party way, provided a roadmap that balances modernisation with the values that have always underpinned public libraries: access, education, community and trust. I do know that it was disappointed that a refreshed public library strategy was not published in time before last year's general election, but I'm sure the Minister will agree that this work must not be lost. That is why we are disappointed that the Noble Minister, Baroness Tycross, has avoided giving a direct answer so far to a direct question on this. So I'll ask the Minister today, when will his department publish a strategy for English public libraries, as other members in this debate have called for? I know that he understands the need for a new strategy and that he knows this needs to be informed by data, rooted in localism and underpinned by a longer-term vision for this essential local provision. This would allow libraries not just to survive, but to flourish in the years ahead. Mr Chairman, on both sides of this House, we believe in public libraries. We all believe in their quiet power to educate and to inspire, and we stand ready to work across the House to ensure that their future is every bit as valuable as their past.
Minister. Mr Dowd, a delight as ever. I won't comment on how well dressed you are today. It's a great delight to take part in this debate, and I congratulate my honourable friend for Mid Derbyshire on securing the debate. He talked a little bit about the history of libraries. I absolutely adore a library. I've used libraries. I've used the British Library many times in its old place when it was in the British Museum and in the new building. That's still new to me. There are people who are younger, obviously, in the chamber who won't remember its old place. The London Library, I've used libraries in Worcester, Stoke, Manchester, Birmingham, Southwark, Newcastle, Oxford, Cambridge. I've used the Lambeth Palace Library. I've used libraries in Cardiff, Treorchy and Porth. I absolutely adore using libraries, and I know that many have referred to their own constituencies, but I rather agree with the Argentinian writer Jorge Luis Borges, who said, I have always imagined that paradise will be a kind of library. He made several points about titles. It's terribly I've got so many bits in my title and in two departments that I think, and sometimes people say, oh no, we've got to have a tourism minister, we've got to have a this minister, we've got to have a that minister. I think the real question in the end is whether we engage sufficiently with the sector and get the work done. And I know that Baroness Twycross, who's taken over these responsibilities relatively recently from me, is very engaged in this work, and I want to give her a little bit of space to be able to lay out what she's going to be able to achieve and the work that she's engaging in before we start talking about titles and reassigning things. The Honourable Member for Strangford. Now, I'm in a slight difficulty here because quite a few members have referred to things which are extremely devolved. Libraries are fundamentally devolved responsibilities, and he makes extremely good points about the mental health values, the health values generally, and the issues in relation to loneliness and so on, which libraries can help with. But I'm not going to start telling people in Northern Ireland how to run their library service, because I think I would suddenly get an email and then a demand for a meeting. And so I'm going to be careful about that. And this also applies, I'm afraid, to my honourable friend, the member for Stirling and Strathallan. I think there's a bit of a competition for size of constituencies going on today. As he knows, I know areas of his constituency quite well because I was educated in partly in Stirling. I know, incidentally, that Bannockburn Library, unfortunately, is closed today. And these issues of days when libraries are closed and open are, of course, financial issues, which are really tough for many local authorities. I was a councillor in Hackney a long time ago, and I know that how difficult it is for local councillors making very tough financial decisions, desperate to keep libraries open every day of the week if they possibly can, but really struggling to do so. He and the Honourable Member for Caithness referred to Andrew Carnegie, who, of course, was an extraordinary investor, as it were, in libraries, or donor to libraries. And I'm aware, as an MP for a former mining constituency, that the mining communities often had to do that for themselves. The miners' unions, or often the trade unions, were a really important part of making sure that their members learnt how to read. And it wasn't just to be able to read things like Alton Locke by Charles Kingsley, one of the early Christian socialists, and the ragged-trousered philanthropist, and many of those other socialist tomes that were so important to the trade union movement. But libraries were a vital part of enabling the working classes to be able to get on in life. So, of course, for Labour MPs, all of this debate, I think, has a particular piquancy. The Honourable Member for Folkestone referred to the reopening. He wants to reopen the library and alongside the creative campus in Folkestone. I thought it was a brilliant day. It was a gorgeous sunny day when I visited, slightly windy. What was really impressive to me was not only the Tracy Emin, I think it was, sort of discarded sock sculpture on the floor and various others around the town. All brilliant. I tried to pick it up, of course, because I thought it was litter, and I suppose that's the whole point. But it's that integration of all the different creative industries working together with the library service is a really potent thing. And of course, the library building that he's referred to is particularly beautiful. Perhaps if it had been better looked after over recent years by Kent County Council, then it will be more readily accessible and more able to be preserved for the future. But I, like him, very much hope that that's going to be able to be reopened. The Honourable Member for Caithness, I'm not sure about his statistic. He says that there are more busts of Rabbie Burns than anybody. I'm very happy if there are, but I kind of suspect that there are more of Gladstone. And there may even be more of Winston Churchill. But nonetheless, the point is made about Carnegie, and philanthropy, of course, is a really important part of how we ended up with so many libraries around the UK. And I would like to see philanthropy play an increasing part into the future. That's not because I want local authorities to walk away from their responsibilities at all, but it's simply this point that there have been philanthropists who decided to give away every single penny of the vast wealth that they made in their lifetime. And I absolutely applaud that. I think the more that we can do to enable that, the better for not only our libraries, but also for all of our creative sector, for museums and galleries, many of whom are struggling in exactly the same way, especially those who are have been associated with local authorities. An honourable friend for Ilford South, he's one of the former councillors, who obviously has experienced some of the difficulties of trying to keep local authority libraries going. And incidentally, it's not just local authority libraries, it's also libraries in universities and in so many other public institutions that have really struggled to survive, some of them independent libraries and so on. He makes very good points about how important it is to be able to diversify. He referred to, I think one of the libraries in his patch also has a gym associated with it. I was in Ogmore Vale in my patch a few weeks ago, and the library and the gym and the community function, it's all part of the same service and very much thought of in an integrated way. And I think that is very much the pattern that lots of local authorities have adopted, and sometimes they're still running them in-house. Sometimes they've decided to hand them over to a third party, and sometimes that allows further financial investment. The Honourable Member for South West Hertfordshire referred to specialised advice that sometimes libraries can provide. And interestingly, this is one of the things that hasn't particularly featured in our debate today, but I would say is a really important part of what the British Library often provides, and many local libraries, is advice to businesses. If you want to set up a business in a local area and you want to understand the local area, probably one of the most important facilities that you're going to go to is the local library, which will have statistical advice and will want to help you in whatever way they can, whether it's with planning law or whatever it may be. If we were to lose that aspect of what libraries provide, I think that would be bad for our economic growth and for our ability to not only grow in some parts of the UK, but grow economically everywhere. One of the strategies that I had from the day I started as MP in the Ronde in 2001 was trying to look at how many local businesses I had. Because quite often everybody thinks, oh, if I want to get more jobs locally, the great idea is to get one big business that's going to employ 1,000, 2,000 people. Actually, in most constituencies, if you can enable lots of small businesses to grow, and grow from employing 2 people to 5 people to 10 people, that was more likely to be effective. There's very few areas where you can do that without libraries having a role to play. The honourable friend for Hexham referred to VE Day celebrations, quite right. That was a very important part of what lots of libraries were doing up and down the country because of their very important role in community, in enabling the community and helping the community. And of course, sometimes our libraries are associated with our archive facility. That has a particular value. One of the great things that British people and people all around the world love doing is exploring their genealogy. and making those facilities, those archive facilities available to people is really important. And investigating, you know, what your granddad or your auntie or whoever did in the war in the past, or where they were living, all of those kind of things. Often those are things that you can do free in a library, which otherwise you might have to pay for at home. So again, that's an important part of what we do. And I note that the Hexham Library tomorrow morning at 10 a.m. has rhyme time, and on Saturday at 4 o'clock in the afternoon has Ukrainian Stories, which I think is a book launch. My honourable friend for Bournemouth East, he admitted to reading Nancy Drew mysteries. I was never quite, and I think they were marketed primarily at girls. I read several as well, but I think I had a cover to hide the fact that it was Nancy Drew. I think modern books for young adults and for kids are very different. They're not just specifically targeted at boys and girls. It's like a complete transformation of that market, and hurrah for that. He set me in mind, I can't remember, I think this is Alexander Pope, a little learning is a dangerous thing, drink deep or sip not the Pierian spring. I mean, that's one of the great things about libraries. They don't just enable you to take that first step into reading, but into reading, as he said, moving on from Nancy Drew and the Hardy Boys, moving into Dickens and Shakespeare and so many others as well. And I'm sure he's not the only person. I'm sure this could be said of every single member, that none of us would have ever arrived here if we hadn't ever used a library. None of us would have ended up being a member of Parliament if we hadn't used the library. And he's quite right, as others have, to pay tribute to the House of Commons Library. It has a slightly different role, obviously, because it provides so much advice for us to be able to inform our contributions in debates. But also, it's got an awful lot of books in it, including some of mine. The honourable member, my honourable friend for Scarborough and Whitby, yes, sorry. She obviously referred to the data bill debate later on, so I'll leave that bit about copyright and AI, if she doesn't mind, for the data bill debate this afternoon, when I'll be appearing in a different capacity. But she's absolutely right about volunteers, because there are so many libraries that either rely entirely as community libraries on their volunteers to keep them open and to run them, or else volunteers play part of the team. And I too want to pay tribute to all of those people who've managed to keep libraries open. My father, who's no longer with us, but he in his latter years was living in Alderney, and one of the things that he and his wife used to love doing was spending a day being the volunteers at the library. I think he quite liked the business of issuing fines. I think that was one of his kind of favourite moments, when he found out that his next door neighbour hadn't returned his book for 17 years or whatever. But she's also right that this is a vital part of the social infrastructure. The honourable member for North Devon, another councillor, and I think councillors have a particular interest, as I've already referred, have a particular interest and insights to bring to this debate. He referred to, I think it's Braunton Library, and the 300 community events. You could mirror that in every single library up and down the land. No library is sort of Ali McGraw's stuffiness. It is a place which is entirely open to the public. People have referred to its role during COVID, to libraries' role during COVID. They've also referred to their role as a place of non-judgmental space where you can be, and you can simply just be. In the winter, sometimes it's a place where you can be in warmth, and that's really important. I've also found one of my favourite moments in a library came a few years ago when I persuaded the British Museum to lend one of its articulated Japanese dragons to my library in Treorchy. Now, I don't know whether we Welsh are just obsessed with dragons, but I remember seeing kids looking at this Japanese dragon, and they were absolutely fascinated and loved it. And that's that sense of enticing people into being curious that I think is another aspect of why libraries can be so important. The honourable member for Old Bexley and Sidcup, he referred warmly to his experience in his own constituency. I'm going to bridle slightly. He referred to our budget decisions. Well, I mean, if we referred to the 14 years of budget decisions that actually provided many of the difficulties for the library service across the whole of the United Kingdom, we could be here for a lot longer. The truth is that many local authorities have had a really tough time with budgets cut year after year after year. And one of my anxieties was always that one of the dangers for national government is you say, right, we're going to tell local authorities to do more and give them less money because we, national government, won't then have to make the cuts. Somebody else will have to make the cuts. And I think that that's one of the things that happened to the library service over all those years. But I hate all the gloom about libraries. I hate it when people keep on banging on about all these libraries have closed and all the rest of it. The truth is that as people have referred to, roughly a third of people in the UK have used a library at least once, and I don't think that's like an annual pilgrimage. Many of them will have used it repeatedly, time and time again, and there are people who will go to the library every single day of the week or every week. They're all about promoting and enabling reading, and sometimes we forget that role. If I could get every child in the country to read one more extra book a year, wouldn't that be a success in the end for them individually and for the economy? We haven't referred to the publishing business in the UK, which is a really important part of our creative industries. We export more books than any other country in the world. I want to keep it like that. We've referred to them as community spaces, and I've also referred to their archive responsibilities and how important that is for many people. And they are constantly evolving. 47 libraries in Norfolk provide a service to Weigh Your Baby. And in Devon, they provide 3D printers, as I understand it. I've already referred to some of and many other members have referred to libraries who are doing innovative, fascinating new things all the time. And last year, £694 million were spent by upper-tier local authorities on libraries in England. All right.
Thank you. Thank you for giving way. One of the key asks from this debate from members across is that the government publish a national strategy on the back of the Sanderson Review. Can I just push the Minister to commit to that today, please?
He's such an impatient man. It's not as if they didn't have 14 years to produce a national strategy or anything like that. One of the asks was about titles and one of the others was about whether there should be a national strategy. As I said earlier, I'm keen to allow Baroness Twycross, who's only recently taken on responsibilities in this area, to develop where she wants to go on this. One of the difficulties about a national strategy is that so much of this is devolved. Of course, we try to foster good relations with our Scottish, Welsh and Northern Ireland counterparts, and there's a regular get-together of the four with the devolved administrations to kind of promote that. But a lot of these decisions are made by local authorities and in other departments. So one of the things that I hope that is going to help with funding is that when local authorities only get an annual settlement and departments only get an annual settlement rather than a 3-year settlement, that makes it much more difficult for them to make coherent long-term decisions. I hope that we're going to be changing that when it comes to the spending review. I have no idea what budget allocations there will be for, obviously, for independent departments. So I'm somewhat resisting this idea of a national strategy. At the moment in DCMS, we're already producing, I think, 3 or 4 national strategies on different subjects, and so I'm somewhat hesitant about advancing down that route. But obviously the Sanderson report made key recommendations, many of them not actually for government at all, but for the sector itself, and we're keen to see those play out and be adopted wherever possible. And we're working with the sector and with the Arts Council England, which has a specific responsibility in relation to libraries in England. Several honourable members have already referred to the amount of money that we've set aside this year, £5.5 million for improving libraries. And we do have a superintending role, obviously. The legislation in 1964, I think, was deliberately drafted in a rather ambiguous way, and that's one of the issues that we always face. But in 24-25, we engaged with 53 local authorities in a superintending role, and 7 since April this year. As members referred to, 276 libraries closed between 2010 and 2023. We do want to make that closure process stop because we believe passionately in libraries.
Thank you very much, Mr Dowd. I want to thank colleagues from across the House for contributing to this important debate that we have had today. We've heard stories of how libraries have transformed individuals' lives, and I was particularly moved by what the Honourable Member for Bournemouth East said and what many other colleagues have said about the House, because we've learnt a lot, but we've also heard some lighter moments as well about the roles libraries have to play. I know ministerial responsibilities have changed and we don't have a mechanism to have Baroness Twycross come here, but I would be grateful if the Minister answering for the government today could make sure Baroness Twycross has heard what has been said in this debate. I know there isn't a commitment that we've had today for a national strategy. There is a lot of good work coming through, but aspects of the Sanderson Review are valuable, and I believe many of those aspects would be very cheap or almost no cost to implement, or it might be something that the sector could just do itself, but with the help of the convening power of the government. So I would be grateful if these messages that we've heard from across the House get to Baroness Twycross, and I would be grateful perhaps if a little bit further down the line, when the department has had more time to chew this over and Baroness Twycross has had time to embed herself in her role, that we might revisit this subject and to see what progress has been made in that time. But thanks very much, everyone.
Order, order. Thank you very much. Could people